My name is Uri Middleman. I'm the host of the UWB Startup Club podcast. Welcome to the second episode. Today I have serial entrepreneur Tim McCann with me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for your time. Let's just jump right into the questions. In my research, I found a through line through some of the companies that you founded. That through line was that social media and social networking were a big focus for you. Rival IQ was a social media marketing platform. Gist was a personal relationship manager with a social address book, and HelpShare was sort of Quora before Quora was a thing. Also, I checked out your SlideShare, and you have 20 different social media strategy slide decks on there. So my question is, how has how have you seen the media space transform over the last 30 years, and what are the ways that startups should be maximizing its utility?
Hmm. Well, I think while that may look like a through line, the origin stories of each of those companies kind of ended up very differently. And so they might have ended up there, but I would not consider myself uh, an expert in social media. I'm definitely sure that I'm not an expert in media now or even social media now. And so I think that it may look that way in retrospect, but I think it's not really a conceptual through line. I
Mhm.
think the part that is a through line is a lot of them have a function of taking a business process that somebody does, executing that or recursively executing that, using the information that comes from that to then make better decisions. So when you think about something like HelpShare, which is the product like Quora before it started, this was one of these things like we all stop and say, like, I have a question. I'm sure someone out there on the internet, this is pre-AI, of course. I'm sure someone out there on the internet has the answer. I just don't have a very good way to find them, to route the question to them, to rate the quality of their answers, and to reward them for doing their work. So that is a business process that all of us still go through almost every day. And we just wanted to build a system to do that to connect people that information. If you think about something like just really started with for certain types of professionals, they want to spend their time. They get up in the morning, they say, like, who am I meeting with today? Oh, this guy Uri. Like, I never met Uri before. What's he all about? Well, that process we effectively automated with Gist, which is to say, can I find the person? Can I discover the information that might be what's known about him out on the internet, of which social is a subset? Or what do I know about him? Where all the emails that we had before, the PowerPoints we shared, or information we shared. So the thing that's probably through line is less about media and more about business process automation,
Mhm.
taking a thing that humans do today. And even when I talk about PSL, and we'll get to that, there's a lot of PSL companies that are take a thing that humans do today, write software to make it more efficient, use machine learning or AI to make that more efficient over time. So that's probably more of a consistent through line than a media through line of at least some of the companies that I've started.
I will say that I do still think that you're connected in the media a lot. You've been on 30 different podcast episodes across ones you've hosted on the Microsoft Beyond the Blue podcast or ones that you've been featured on. And I came across a 15-year-old video of you talking about the a framework for social media creation at the time. This is 15 years ago, so it's early stages of Twitter. It's the listen, share, contribute, create framework, and I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I think as a founder, and I know we're focused on founders here, any founder has to have a perspective on the future that they want to create or they want to see. And from that, you need to start getting into the places where that conversation is happening. So that's the listen component. So I need to listen to other people have a similar or differing view that I have on the future that I want to go create. Then there's the share part. So some of those people and some of those voices, regardless of what platform, I might have done this 15 years ago at the beginning of Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or et cetera, and now there may be, Reddit or others, where now I'm going to take the things that I believe are good and I'm going to share them with other people. So now I'm a curator and an amplifier. Then there's the contribute part. So taking that perspective and adding my own, right? Which is I'm commenting on your post or other people's posts. And now I'm part of that community and I'm contributing positively or in a debate sort of format. And at some point, you come up with your own perspective and you create it. And that usually leads into your own following or your own blog or your own podcast or your own YouTube channel or your own whatever. But at some point, most founders will end up into I'm going to be a create also because I want the rest of the people to understand what I'm talking about.
I know you said that you're not really tapped into social media now, but j just in my research, it's really interesting to look at how there's like clear phases of media on the internet of like firstly there's blogs and Twitter, then YouTube, and it just moves on, and then podcasts, which is now like the place. These are all places where people sort of talk their mind. And I was wondering, do you have any thoughts about the what's the future of that? Do you think there'll be like AI podcasts where I can just say, give me a podcast where it's like these two people talking. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, we're going to see over the next couple of years. I mean, AI has already and will continue to infiltrate many, 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 many more places. And there will be AI summarization, like go listen to those 47 podcasts and make an aggregated podcast. There'll be versions of one AI talking to the other AI, and whether people will find that interesting or not, who knows? So I think there will be lots of different. There'll continue to be more channels. I mean, we may not have sat here 5 years ago and said there's going to be a thing called TikTok, and this is what it's going to look like, and this is how it's going to work, or 10 years ago and said a thing like Reddit. But one could argue. I mean, you're young enough that you don't remember like before the web. I mean, there was basically bulletin boards. There was 30 years ago a version of Reddit, right? And that has effectively, when you think about a lot of the internet, it is a means of people to connect and communicate around categories of ideas they care about. And these are just different instantiations with different capabilities. And now we will have emergence of our own versions of AI. So I have one of these already where you could basically call a phone number and you could talk to me and get my advice. And it has done and read all of the things that you've read, and it will give you pretty decent versions and most often things that will be referenced from something I already said. Okay, that already exists. I mean, I already built it for myself. And then there will be more of these that will exist. And then there will be adversarial versions of that. Like we're building this into some of our products where, let's say you're a founder, you could basically come up with your own idea. You could put it into our product called Lev. Then that Lev could effectively have an adversarial conversation like a founder to a VC. The VC would ask you questions, and you as a founder would answer those questions and back and forth the same way as if you and I talking right now.
Does anyone ever call you back and is like, was I talking to AI just now?
It's well known. I mean that it's an experiment for me.
Mm.
So it is that, but I'm going to keep experimenting in that particular way, and I think other people will too, because I can only be single threaded, right? Part of the reason that I go on podcasts or I go write blog posts is that those frameworks tend to be broadly applicable, that they can be useful to a lot of people, but I can only be in one place at one time.
Mhm.
But a blog post can be in thousands of places at the same time. A video could be there, a podcast could be there. So a lot of the reason I do that is that some of my frameworks will be quite useful. They'll be useful mostly to founders, and I want to make sure that they have access to those. And those are just different mediums to put them out there.
So yeah, AI is a huge time saver, and I was really interested in Spark and Mesh, the internal tools that you use at PSL for early stage ideation. But something that I was thinking about is that LLMs have this issue of they will positively a positive bias issue where they'll just confirm whatever you say, they'll sort of agree with whatever you say, which makes it really hard to critically analyze ideas. And I was wondering how you address and mitigate against these confirmation bias issues and also like false slash outdated data that the AI might be working with.
Yeah, great. Well, let me just tell you a little bit of the history of how we got to Spark and Mesh, and now the product which is publicly available called Lev. So, as you mentioned, like I've been a founder, five-time founder myself, three successful exits, been an angel investor, been around lots and lots of different companies, and I joined PSL 8 years ago. Over the last 10 years inside of PSL, which is a startup studio, we've tested about 500 ideas and we just created our 41st company. Okay, that's the process of doing a startup studio or incubator. Um, Along the way, we started asking ourselves, can we automate pieces of what we do using software? And of course, the answer is yes. So the first thing that we built was this thing called an ideation tool. And it was really just a way that we could generate ideas and capture ideas and vote on ideas and had a common thread around those ideas. A simple web-based thing. And then we have frequently at PSL ideation sessions. People come in, we pitch ideas, we put them all in there, move along a little bit in time. And the beginnings, I think this was probably like chat, like GPT 2.5, maybe something like that, really, really early. And we said, well, let's start to add some structure to the ideation. So we basically would take someone who would write an idea, like a kind of a janky version of the idea. And then could we break that down into customer value prop, feature set, business model, and the beginning of a competitive landscape? So that was phase 1.5 of the ideation tool. We used that for a while. Uh, about 3 years ago, we started to ask ourselves, are we consistently evaluating the ideas that we have? And the answer was no, we were very inconsistent depending on the day. So we said, let's build ourselves an evaluation rubric for what is a good startup idea. Now imagine that that has a table, like a number of rows and number of columns. The rows were the core categories for any given startup. For example, market size, competitive differentiation, customer pain, strength of team, efficiency of go-to-market, et cetera. These are all the rows. And the columns are basically a score F to A. So small market size and not growing very much might be an F. Large market size growing very rapidly might be an A. And we filled in every one of those cells on that table. And we use that, we called that our evaluation rubric. And when we would think about companies through the studio, we would use that rubric to say, hey, every company's not perfect, but some of them have challenges on market size or competitive differentiation or whatever. Okay, that was about 3 years ago. Then the reasoning models, about a year ago, the reasoning models came out. And the reasoning models, we basically took the concept of the reasoning model, we took our rubric, and we took our ideation tool and we put them all together. And that became Spark. And what Spark was able allowed us to do was to be able to take an idea, break it down into components part, evaluate it against the rubric, and then move our validation at a much higher and faster rate and more consistently. We started showing that to other people, other startup studios, other founders. They said, oh my God, I totally want to use that. But we didn't build it for an external consumption. We built it internally consumption. So about 6 months ago, we decided we're going to now turn that same concept into a new product that will be available for founders, studios, universities, et cetera, everywhere where founders are doing the ideation and validation part of the startup journey. And that has now been launched as a product called Lev, like giving founders leverage. And it effectively does what I just said, which is allows you on a business model canvas type of way to go through a semi-structured version of, can I describe the idea? Can I build a competitive landscape and find differentiation? Can I define an ideal customer profile and get some customers? Can I name it, brand it, launch it, and even build it? And that is all what's inside Lev. So it brings 10 years worth of PSL's background, my own personal background, all the collective experience we have here, puts it in software, puts an AI layer behind it, and hopefully we can help many more thousands of founders either not start the idea that's going to die anyway, or for the ideas that they ultimately choose that they can get into market with much more velocity. So the evolution of that, I think, is important to get to where we are, because even for a startup founder, like lots of times you have the beginning of it, you build and then they change and then you change and change, but they're building on top of each other with the same basic concept that we had here at PSL of, can we help more founders succeed more rapidly against more different companies? And that's the concept of an incubator or a startup studio.
So when you frame it like this, it feels like the ideas are becoming like nothing. It's water. It just exists, you know. An idea is something that an AI can generate for you. It's very quick and easy. And my question is, if you can like generate thousands of ideas like this, how important is the idea versus the execution?
Well, let me go back to yeah, I know the previous question you asked, and I do want to answer it. So, and then I'll answer this one. You asked about how sort of either hallucination or overly positive response may affect somebody using Lev in this case. So
Mhm.
Spark was an internal thing, Lev is the external thing. So we'll talk about Lev. So most of what Lev does and the AI component of that is effectively automating a lot of the work that you would do anyway with the level of assistance. So if I were going to go build a competitive landscape, what categories would I look at and can I automate the search? And where necessary, can I make sure that the information that I'm going to get is referenceable? That's what you would do as a human.
Mhm.
We just make that a lot better. Then when you start to say, can I benefit from the creativity of an AI? So let's say that I'm building Nuco and Nuco is competing against company A, B, C, D, and E, and we know enough about A through E. Now an AI can be creative and help you come up with creative positioning. Like how could my new thing be positioned alongside and different than the existing things? So an AI can be applied toward what, let's call it an automated search or discovery, and or it can be used in a creative way as an assistant, the same way you or I might build a business together. And then it can be used in a different form of automation, like building a landing page with a product like Lovable or others, where you're effectively prompting it to get the best practices and then automating that. So in many ways, Lev is an orchestration layer between using different forms of AI for different use cases. And there's no point in the case of the founder of being overly generous. It's about collecting the right information to help the founder to make better decisions.
Mhm.
Okay, now let's come back to your question about ideas versus execution. Ideas are easy. Ideas are easy for lots and lots of people, every single person you meet, and lots of entrepreneurs out there have ideas every 5 minutes, and they can't pick which idea to work on. So that's one form of decision making. They sometimes have a harder ability to think about what is the founder idea fit. Like I just talked about my background. That's why I might be particularly good to do Lev because I've been doing this for 30 years versus somebody else who might have the exact same idea but doesn't have the same kind of experience that I might have to go do Lev. So there's founder, the idea is easy. Then you get founder idea fit. Then you're going to have this execution, which is a whole set of very difficult decisions. Which ICP do, which ideal customer profile do I focus on? Which go-to-market strategy do I try? Let's say I talk to 5 customers, all of them kind of like my product, but I have to start choosing which features I want. So the execution is way, way more important. And that execution, and especially as a founder and a founder CEO, their ability to make decisions, number one, make difficult decisions and make those decisions where they're mostly right.
Do you have any examples of example use cases for Lev for like actual instances where it's been used for like, for example, to test if an idea's unique competitive advantage is appealing enough to the ideal customer profile, enough to make them want to switch to that product?
Well, it can certainly be creative in generating different options. And those options can be tested in a couple different ways. They could be tested because let's say you were a customer and I was the founder. I'd call you and say, hey, listen, like you guys use XYZ product. I think I'm building a better version of that. Here's why I think it's better. Here's feature A and feature B or the deficiency of the existing product or whatever. And you're either going to believe me or you're not. You're
Mhm.
going to say, yeah, I totally want to try your new thing, whether it's built or not. Or you're going to say, no, thank you. Like I'm totally fine. So that's the direct customer discovery or voice of customer interaction. Then you're also going to get sort of feedback on this when you are testing. Can I drive people to said landing page? Can I drive people to say, hey, I'm building a new version of X? Or it's unfortunate now that it's called X, building a new version of a thing, and I want to see whether people want to believe in whatever I'm telling them, that they would want to give me their email address, want to sign up, want to fill out a survey. All those are indications of people's interest in whatever thing I might build. And that interest can be both toward, yes, I'd like to use it, but also their ability and willingness to pay for it. And all of that is part of the customer discovery process that we use at PSL and you would use in Lev and every founder should use anyway.
Are you looking for Lev to also handle the voice of customer interviews and actually making the forms, reaching out, automating all those processes? Or is that sort of there's no infrastructure built for that yet?
Today, Lev can help you define the ICP. It can help you think about what are the right outbound messages, and it can help you think about what is a good interview script.
Hmm.
And if I were doing an interview, then it could help me with that. So if I might be an inexperienced founder, or I mean, I'm a quite experienced founder, but when I look at what Lev generates, I'm like, oh, yeah, those are two or three questions I hadn't thought about. Those are good questions. And I can edit those inside of Lev. So it's a canvas. So I can edit it to make it my own. And I can even use the AI Copilot to say, I'm really struggling with how to talk about the pricing or the price value or quantified value or something like that. And it can help in an assistive way of generating two, three, four, 10 different ways you might get at that same problem. And then that just goes into the interview script. And then that goes back to the voice of customer calling. I don't think anything substitutes today for true voice of customer one-on-one asking and trying to get that feedback because you learn these things that you wouldn't, those are sort of semi unstructured oftentimes.
Hmm.
You know, a customer says a word that you're like, such a better way to describe it. Or a customer says, well, I don't like feature A and B, but if you could build feature C, gosh, I would really want to be a customer. And feature C you hadn't thought about yet. Or they're telling you about why they're really dissatisfied with whatever current situation is and how you might make it better. So these are all basic skills of customer discovery, customer development.
First off, I want to say that Lev sounds awesome, by the way. But
Thank you.
second, yeah, of course. Second, when you're doing voice of customer interviews, how do you know if the person you're talking to isn't just sort of saying what you want to hear? How do you know that they're telling the truth? Is sort of
When you ask them for their credit card number.
yeah. You talked about looking for people that will pay $1,000 for something instead of just $10, right?
Well, just you have to just pick, right? So everybody should have, and these are some of the blog posts which you could reference in. So I use and develop and use this framework called the CVFB framework. Customer value prop feature set business model. For this customer who wants this thing, our product does, and our business model is. Okay, that's the CVFB framework. And any company, any founder could call me and they could talk about what they're doing for a long time. And I would almost always say back to what them. So what I'm hearing is for this customer who wants this value prop, your product does, or your feature set is, and your business model is. Now, as a founder, you're already starting off to say, am I going to charge $10 a month or $10,000 a month? I don't know. That's your choice, right? And if you're building a big, complicated enterprise piece of software, you might have to charge $10,000 a month. And if you're building a mobile app to find wine bars in Seattle, you might charge $10 a month. So you start off with a hypothesis there of what do you think you're going to charge. Part of the way you back your way into that is competitive, like who else is charging whatever. Part of the way is does the customer want to pay in the way I want to charge? $10 a month, $10 for every wine bar you go to, et cetera. How does the customer quantify value? So you can't take all the value, you can take some of the value. So those are all ways to back in. Once you're in a zone of pricing, then your opportunity is to validate that with the customer. So, hey, Uri, if I build you a cool wine bar selector thing for Seattle, would you pay me $10 a month if it gave you the best bars? And you're like, well, I don't know. The list isn't that valuable, but if I could get to if I could get to the head of the wait list, oh, that might be valuable. Oh, okay, that's a feature I hadn't thought about. Don't know whether I can build it yet or not, but I'd pay $20 a month, or I'd pay $10 a month for base and $10 for every wait list I got to the front of. Okay, these are like ways you could develop a business model and a value and a feature set. So, and at the end of the day, I would then say, if you were an early adopter customer, you say, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. I would love to be a customer of that product and I could easily afford $10 a month. And it seems totally reasonable that when I had the option to go to the front of the wait list for an additional $10, I would. And I'm like, great, I'd love for you to be a design partner. And you'd say, I'd love to be a design partner. And I'd say, well, to be a design partner, I need a 1 year advance. And you have to pay me for 10 months or a year's in advance for $100. And you say, no, I don't think so. Okay. That doesn't mean you can't be a design partner, or you want it so much. You're like, that seems totally reasonable. And I want to pay $100 up front. And here's my credit card. And whether I charge you or not, it's not the point, but you get the gist of how much does the customer want Have you assessed how much they're willing to pay, why they want to pay? And at the end of the day, like they could say, that sounds great. I would love to use that. But until you get the credit card, until they're really willing to pay, you don't know.
Mhm. From what I hear you say, and in my research as well, it feels like customer finding and customer development is sort of the biggest aspect of startups, looking for people that actually want to use what you're giving them. And I was wondering, does Lev give you contacts or ways to also find the people, or do they just make the sort of outreach um, prompts and stuff like that?
Yes, it does. And it
Mhm.
will be better. So my recommendation for founders, this is not fully in Lev yet, but if you think about founder idea fit, if I know a lot of people who are already likely customers of whatever thing I'm building, I'm probably already a better founder,
Mhm.
right? Because either I've experienced that or I hang around with people. Let's just go on this dumb wine bar idea. So let's say I like to go out for wine all the time. I knew lots of the people who ran wine bars. I like to take my friends out for wine. It would be easy for me to get customer validation on this particular thing versus I've never had wine or I don't like going to wine bars or I don't know any people like to do that. Okay, you're already a better founder idea fit. So the first and best founders usually will find people in their social network somehow because those people will give them more time and they'll be more forgiving while the pitch and communication of the idea is poor, while you're still sort of figuring it out versus sort of people you've never met before. So starting with your own professional network and then reaching out to people who might be referred from your professional network. And then from there, you might be reaching out to people that you don't know, which is where you're now getting into some form of demand generation. But those three concentric circles are good ways to do customer discovery. Known network, like be great if your brother or sister happen to love wine bars too. They're going to spend more time with you. They're going to be more forgiving. They're going to give you more input. Now they may be giving you lots of happy face input, like, oh yeah, that'd be great. I would love it. But that's okay because if you have to ask for them credit card too at
Mhm.
some point, well, would you pay $10 a month for that thing? And they're like, nah, I don't know. Okay, so but narrow network, wider network, and then unknown network are, ultimately ways you can do customer discovery and customer development.
I want to talk about how mesh plays into this, but first, a question I just had was, what is your advice to people that have ideas um, for apps that they think there's a lot of validation for people? Oh, they say yes, I want to use that, but I wouldn't pay anything for that. It's just like a user-based idea. They think that there can be a lot of users, but not a lot of. They don't have any ideas for something that people would pay for in that idea. What is your advice there?
Well, if you're starting a project and having a fun side project and learning about how to do software development or something else, but if you're trying to start a company and a business, then obviously someone needs to pay.
Mhm.
There are many different forms of businesses, right? There are marketplace businesses, there are advertising supported businesses, there are transactional businesses, there are enterprise businesses. So, my advice to founders is please pick a business model and a strong perspective on what that business model is that you're going to go validate under the assumption that you're trying to build a company.
Mhm.
If you're trying to have fun and do a school project, great. But even then, most of those projects are done in a way that want to be self sustaining, and to be self-sustaining must have somebody who pays for it, and therefore you may as well be doing customer discovery on the who's going to pay for it and how and why and how much.
So about mesh, it sounds like a super interesting thing. My understanding is it's like essentially you take all the connections in PSL or and your network, and it's a way to sort of have access to a bunch of people for validation of an idea or finding team members and stuff like that. Is that right?
That's correct. So we built Mesh as a standalone separate product.
Hmm.
So a lot of what we do, and I would say a lot of what a founder does, is they build networks around themselves, right? And specifically around a couple of different vectors. So one would be customer vector. The second vector might be team members, like people are going to come along with me on the journey. A third might be investors. A fourth might be advisors or influencers. So a good founder is going to think about like who in my current network, but then they're going to spend a bunch of time, like as they go through it, building more connections with humans who do that, who care about those different types of things. Now we do this all the time. And so we just built software to automate that. So we collect all of our contacts. We prioritize the ones based on their most recent roles, based on sort of directors or above, because most of the people we're looking for are either founders, co-founders, investors, and potentially customers. So that when we come up with a new idea, we can run it against our own mesh. This is the PSL mesh to answer some of the questions of who could be a great founder, a great co-founder, a great investor, or a great early adopter customer. And at some point, we'll bring back the concept of mesh into Lev. We don't have it in there now, but that same thing where I go back to narrow network. Because today, most of founders would be like, oh, who in my network do I know who likes this wine bar idea? They think about it. You're like, it should be more automated than that.
Mhm.
And then from that, we'll bring the concepts of mesh back into Lev at some point in time. But now it's just really an internal tool for us.
For the startup studio, right?
Yeah, for the studio.
So the startup studio, my understanding of PSL, there's three branches, right? There's the VC fund, the startup studio, and then a corporate innovation branch as well. And uh, you work mainly in the startup studio and also do some corporate innovation with a team sense, right? That was one idea.
Yes, as the managing directors, we sit across all three aspects of PSL.
Mhm.
Some of us are weighted a little bit differently. So I'm a little bit more weighted on the two that you mentioned. But I do direct investing out of the venture fund as well. The companies we start, we invest in along out of the venture fund. So technically, I'm on both sides of that equation. And then, yes, TeamSense was started with a local company here in Seattle called Fortive.
Mhm.
And Fortive is a large industrial technology company. They own brands like Fluke and Tektronix, or at least they did at the time. And they came to us and said, "Hey, listen, we would like to build more software companies." And one of the first ideas we came up with was TeamSense. We went up from the idea to the spin out and early paying customers in 6 weeks. And so it was very, very fast right at the beginning of COVID. And so we've created, of the 41 companies we've done at PSL so far, six have been co-created with corporate partners.
So regarding corporate, so that reminds me of something I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about you've been in multiple spaces throughout your career. You've been in the founder space, you've been in the corporate enterprise space at Microsoft, and you've also been now in the VC fund startup studio space. And I was wondering, across all these spaces, what are the pros and cons of each?
Well, the pros of startups, of course, are that you're in control of your own ship, right? I mean, it's just you, that you're very broad in what you get to work on, right? And that may be hour by hour. I'm working on marketing, I'm working on product, I'm working on customer discovery. You're usually much more directly tied to a set of customers versus abstracted in an enterprise, right? How often does the average product manager get to really talk to a bunch of customers? And like if you're a developer or a designer, like almost never. So a lot closer to customers, a lot more doing and a lot less managing, but a lot more variability, right? I mean, you have this, okay, and for most good startups, you're raising money every 12 to 18 months. You don't know if you're going to be successful raising again. And so every 12 to 18 months, you have this sort of existential crisis of is it going to work or not? And in a corporate sense, I think there's a lot more stability. But the positive side, so you have stability, you have lots more people to work on stuff, and you probably have larger scale impact. So when I used to work at Microsoft, I used to run Exchange, and every decision we made was affecting hundreds of millions of people. When you're running your random Lev startup, the decisions I make affect tens of people. The very different scale. I mean, I used to run BlackBerry Messenger at BlackBerry, tens of millions of people based on the product decisions or the marketing decisions or the pricing decisions that you make. So you feel this global scale versus local scale. You feel large number of users versus small number of users. But what you're trading off there is lots of other people's priorities and the pace for sure that corporate's just a lot slower.
Right now, you're in the startup studio space, right? And would you ever go back to just working on one startup? What would be the case there to just fully work and commit to a single startup?
Yeah, about every five startups that come through PSL, I have that emotion. So I think about it all the time. In
Mhm.
fact, when I started Gist, before I did PSL, So I did a startup studio or an incubator for Paul Allen that
Hmm.
was called Vulcan Labs. And this was in 2006. I started working for Paul and Steve Hall, who runs Vulcan Capital. And Paul had unlimited money and unlimited ideas. Like every 5 minutes, like another idea came out of Paul's mouth, but he didn't have a means by which to prioritize those, to validate those, and then choose a subset of those to become companies. So I built that version for Paul along with Steve Hall and a few others. And the fifth idea we really worked on meaningfully was became Gist. Now I fell in love with that and I left to go run that company. And then Vulcan Labs kind of evaporated behind me. But um, so about every five ideas that come through here, I'm like, oh, damn, that's a good idea. Now we work on a lot of ideas, some ideas that are PSL led, where there isn't a CEO or a founder, and then we have to go find one. And then there are lots of ideas where the founder's already there. So those are a non-issue, right? Those are I'm just helping through the studio.
Hmm.
But Lev is a great example of that, where I have a lot of passion for this concept. And I'm functioning in the CEO capacity at this point in time. I'm still fully employed by PSL, but I'm functioning and leading that company. And so the things that would have to be true is a thing that is really aligns with my own founder idea fit, where I can see, a future that I want to create. And oftentimes where I find a great co-founder. I've done this enough times now where I really enjoy a 2 or 3 person team as a co-founding team. And for any given idea that I would want to go do full time, it would need that kind of complementary. It's usually a technical co-founder, even though I'm an engineer, but a technical co-founder and a go-to-market co-founder type of, and to the extent that there was the right idea in the right category at the right time with the right kind of people, then I could certainly see myself running another company at some point in time.
Awesome. I was wondering, 2 years ago, this is just a question about how AI has been optimizing your workflow at PSL. 2 years ago, on the Chase Martin podcast, you said you review about 1,000 pitches a year. I was wondering if that's increased at all or stayed about the same.
Mm, I think if we so in terms of inbound pitches, it's probably about the same, maybe a little bit higher. In terms of ideas we consider, it is growing
Mm.
because of the tools like Spark and Mesh and Lev, and even the ways in which we're engaging with more founders. So there are more people
By
who are,
inbound pitches, what do you mean?
like somebody wants to raise money from the venture fund, right? They're just,
Oh.
so and so introduced me and they want to raise a $2 million seed round. And so, we're reviewing that pitch too.
Mhm.
But the internal ideas is increasing for sure.
Mhm.
And it's increasing because we can kill them faster, so therefore ideation and validation. And I think we're right at the beginning of this. Can we use more AI to give us more ideas that we should go validate as well? So there's like we haven't done a lot of that yet. We've done 1 or 2 experiments, and we're going to do more experiments in that category, which is, can we find a founder and build ideas around them? Can we take an idea and find a founder around those? Can we take a general theme, and can we use the general theme and our own expertise to generate a set of ideas, even if those are just like getting like a brainstorm, like getting you going, like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. Oh, that makes me think of this other thing. So I think we're going to see more of those. This next year will definitely be more AI assisted ideation and validation, whether it be specifically in Lev or just more thematically.
Are there any current product ideas that are just sitting on the shelf waiting for like a perfect founder fit?
Oh yeah, yeah, tons, tons. I mean, we all have things we've either worked on before that we never found the right founder for, or just general, gosh, I wish that existed type of thing. And sometimes they become a little bit dated. By the time you actually come around to them, like I meet a founder and then you're like, well, oh, and now the competitive landscape has changed. So they sometimes get stale in that way. But yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times a person would come to us and say, hey, this is my past experience, and I want to go do a work with you at the studio to do a new company, and here's my idea. And they tell us about their idea, and then we go build a competitive landscape, or we try and do customer discovery and we can't find it, and we say that we should kill that idea. But we really like you. And they're like, yeah, but that was my best idea. We're like, okay, well, now let's go look at the backlog and see which ideas might resonate with you. And is it still a good time to do that idea?
Mhm. So the founder really has to be obsessed with the idea to to get that perfect fit, is what
I
you're
think you
saying.
want to be obsessed with the idea, you want to be obsessed with the future vision, and you want to be obsessed with the customer.
Hmm.
Right. And that's the best. It's like I am falling in love with my customer and I want to spend as much time with them. And I'm starting off solving a small problem for them that's big enough that they're willing to pay me some money for. But I'm going to spend many, 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 many years with them if I'm lucky. And therefore, I want to fall in love with all their different problems that they have and slowly but surely chip away of adding in more and more and more value, for that customer. I mean, think about like a Microsoft suite, right? They start off with one problem and then a second problem and a third problem and a fourth problem and a fifth problem, all for the same knowledge worker kind of person called Microsoft Office. Or then you think about, a developer start off with one problem, then the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one, and that's called, Azure/GitHub,
Hmm.
and on and on and on. So you start by falling in love with the customer and falling in love with the category and falling in love with what you think the future state would be. And if you can get enough customers who want to believe you and go along that journey with you, you might have a chance at making a successful startup.
Across like inbound and internal idea generation, ideation, are there any startups that you keep seeing that you highly like discourage or like are kind of annoyed or not annoyed, like sick of seeing? Like specifically for first time founders to pursue, like something it's kind of out of the box, out of the scope.
Well, I mean, if you go to like first time founders or as you get younger, and this is true for most people, they oftentimes are trying to solve a problem that they have.
Hmm.
And those problems for venture scale things, especially as you're a younger founder, tend not to be venture scale and they tend not to be a big enough problem. So, how many times do I have to see the where are we going to have lunch problem solved? Like that's a very common, sort of student problem. Like, yeah, we always sit around like, where should we have lunch again? You're like, oh, don't build another app to do that thing. But not really, because sometimes good founders have their own unique take, and it's also, I mean, some another framework is, why this, right? You're a really talented person. Why ever choosing to focus on this problem? Okay, that's why this. Why you? Why are you the best person to go solve this? And the closer you are to being super unique, only and the best person on the planet to go solve this particular problem, and then why now? Because the solving that problem 5 years ago or solving that problem 2 years ago or solving that problem now may be very different. The market will might have changed, the competitive landscape may have changed, the capabilities to build said product might have changed. So it's the why this, why me, why now? And answering those questions for a founder is a really good exercise.
I was wondering a little bit of pivot to AI. What are your thoughts on about how AI is going to transform education over the next 10 years or so?
10 years is too far to look out.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that the good news is that these capabilities are relatively inexpensive and nearly accessible for almost everybody who's certainly in college, but accessible. It's highly personalizable,
Mhm.
and it's got a pretty good memory, and it has access to the entire internet.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. So now, how does that impact? Is that your ability to create highly customized learning, self-directed learning, is probably the best it's ever been in human history. That's amazing. So how that changes the concepts of educational institutions, that's the question. How does it change personal education? Means that the good news is these tools are available, they're accessible, they are relatively inexpensive, almost free, and it means you can create and learn almost anything you want. And it's not just AI specifically, but it's all kinds of AI applied to different things. I mean, just think about YouTube. You can learn like basically anything you want on YouTube. And how much does it cost? Nothing. Free. Crazy. And now imagine you want to create, the best course ever on XYZ thing, but the best course on XYZ thing based on what you already know, or based on the way that you want to learn it, or the modality you want to learn it in. You want to listen to a podcast, you want to read a book, you want to watch a movie. All of that will be for different people to learn different things. That capability now exists. And you want to flip back and forth. I want to read for a while. I want to listen for a while. I want to Google Slides for a while. I want a movie of it. I want a cartoon. I want a quiz. the exact same subject can be pivoted in all those different ways effectively in real time.
Also, you're an adjunct professor at UW, right?
Yes.
Do you have any courses right now?
No. But
Oh,
I do teach I have taught and I engage with mostly kind of create a company course.
mhm.
I've also done a lot of like how do you pitch and communicate your company. This is kind of like CVFB and pitch decks and things like that. And then I do a number of I would say guest speaking primarily around this customer discovery category and a
Mhm.
little bit around fundraising category and sometimes on founder idea fit and first five org chart, meaning how do I build the early team? So those are the categories where I'm not teaching a course per se, but I deliver that content through other people's courses now.
So on AI and like evaluating AI startup pitches, two years ago, I heard on a podcast, you mentioned the 3Ds framework, the data, distribution, and design. And I was wondering, even through all of the huge and rapid innovation in the last couple of years, is this still a sustainable framework to evaluate AI companies?
I think it's pretty good. I mean, I think it works in the sense of do you have or do you create any unique data?
Mhm.
And if you happen to start with a lot, it's better. Or can you accumulate a lot? That's for sure. And the more data you have, the better you're going to be able to train your AI. And that could be user generated data, or it could be data you could collect. Distribution and finding unique ways to acquire customers. We've obviously talked a lot about that. And design. This is how are people going to experience it? And if you think about a product like Lev, we could have made 100 different choices, and I don't know whether we've made the right choices on how people will experience this AI generated content. Should it be in the way we've done it with the co-pilot on the right side, the left side, the co-pilot popping up? Where do you save things? I mean, even looking at, products like ChatGPT, how they've organized the information and how that's changed over time. And then as it's become more and more and more cluttered, now all of a sudden they're going to have to go through another like design function of how can I effectively use this to be efficient as you get more and more features. So I think it's a reasonable way, in addition to all the founder insight and who the founder is, but this can I think hard and create unique ways of designing it, distributing it, and then collecting and using the more usage data to make it better.
Recently, have you seen like an increase in not just language type data, more of like video due to VO3 and Sora 2 coming out, or other modes of AI, not just language?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have this in, some of our companies where, we have voice agents that can help you with customer discovery. We have visual agents that can help you design prototypes for a product. Visual agents that can help you design packaging for a food product. So there's generating of, we have another company that helps people with their name, image, and likeness generate content called Official. So if you were a star, you're like, I don't want to fly to Seattle to go do this shoot in the kitchen. Can you just like take my name, image, likeness and just put me in the kitchen holding the spatula? So that's what Official does. So these are all generative forms of AI that are in that particular case, video or audio. We have another company in our portfolio called Blue Pill, and Blue Pill is AI customer personas. So you can have a million different personas. You can ask them all the right kinds of questions, and strangely enough, they tend to function just like humans.
You talked about still working with Adam Loving, who you've been working with him for 30 years. I was wondering, how do you evaluate people and find people that you know and trust to be able to divide and conquer and work fast and efficiently? What's a good heuristic or framework for uh, this is a good person that I need to keep working with for a long time?
Well, everybody will have different answers to this question. But for me, and having worked with Adam for a long time, and now Adam has left PSL and Adam works at Meta. So Adam
Okay.
is now working on the Llama team at Meta. So after all those times, but we've not always worked together. We go in and out of those sort of phases, and there are a number of different people like that in my professional career. Um, first of all, you want to have people that you can get along with, and we're all different in the ways of what does getting along with us mean. complementary skills, uh, maybe a similar view on how and who you want to work with, right? Because you're usually going to add more people to the team. Uh, Clear functional skill that's differentiated from what I do, right? So Adam's particularly good at, writing code and building product and things like that, but many other people. So I would say there's the fit of how do we want to see the world and how do we want to work. There's the function, which is sort of what can they do and why is it complementary uh, to me, and then what type of people do we want to continue to surround ourselves with?
So I know we're out on time. I'm gonna ask one last closing question. Um, it's the question is, what is the question that you wish that I had asked you, but I didn't?
The question you didn't ask was like, where can people find out more about this or your frameworks? And that you can find at my blog is tamccann.com.
Mhm. Awesome. All right, yeah, everyone go to tmccann.com, read the blog, subscribe, go follow him on LinkedIn, and yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Super fun. Great to see you and have the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you.